Well, in the 90s, it was really I came in to do this job of environmental security, we called it, because the thinking went under, well, Al Gore was vice president at the time, and Les Aspin was Secretary of Defense. And both of them, when they had been in the Senate and the House, Aspin had been chair of the House Armed Services Committee. Gore had been on the Senate Armed Services Committee, where I had served under Sam Nunn. And both of them well, Gore, of course, had been involved with climate change very early on. And both had seen in the early post-Cold War period the need to sort of and the value of sort of redirecting defense capability and resources better to understand global environmental challenges. But they were very much in the minority of thinkers at the time, I would say, and really the Defense Department overall conceived of environmental issues mostly about cleaning up waste at military bases and complying with environmental laws. Indeed, that's where most of the money was. Investments in defense had been growing rapidly in complying with the Superfund law and the hazardous waste laws, RCRA and CERCLA, to the point where in the early to mid-90s, that was over several $billion, close to $3 to $4 billion a year, particularly as we began closing more bases in the 80s. Starting from 88 to 95, the Department of Defense had 4 rounds of base closure, and all those bases, had to be cleaned up, and there was pressure from communities to turn the property over back for productive reuse and job creation. So that was where sort of the day-to-day activity and really the dollars and the people were focused, and much of the congressional interest was in, how are you doing taking care of my installations and my facilities? At the same time, there was a growing awareness globally of global environmental challenges, focused on things like transboundary water pollution, and there was a London Dumping Convention, which the U.S. which dealt with dumping of plastics and waste at sea, that the U.S. had recently signed on to, that the Russians were not in compliance with at the time. Then there was a treaty. This is sort of, in some ways, a predecessor to the discussions about Kyoto and climate change, but it had to do with chlorofluorocarbons. Help me out now, somebody with the treaty that was predecessor to this. It's just going out of my head, but I'll remember it. Montreal Protocol, and DOD was beginning to comply with the Montreal Protocol and found that actually it could improve performance of weapon systems and become more efficient by doing some technology investments that allowed it to change out and find substitutes for those chlorofluorocarbons where they had military application, which was mostly in firefighting and related uses. And that was the sort of beginning of an awareness within the Department of Defense that I think is reflective of industry still today, that in fact there can be many positive benefits to both complying with environmental laws, but actually to internalizing the externalities of pollution. And so the Department of Defense became more efficient. And as it did so, it began to adopt an environmental ethic.